And good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Monday, November the 28th, and we are here at Common Sense America. Welcome back. I hope you had an amazing Thanksgiving holiday with your friends and your family. We are so grateful for you to join us here this morning. Back here live, all new guests, all new special topics, all new features throughout the week as we head into the Christmas and Hanukkah seasons. And so I'm so thankful for you guys to be here. I was sitting back last night after we did our road trip to Pennsylvania, back up north and then back on Saturday. And I just sat there and thought last night as I was sitting on my cozy couch watching Great American Christmas, just reflecting on the power of the holiday, reflecting on the power of what the holidays mean, and also reflecting on what is ahead for our families, for our nation, and just being grateful for our faith and what our faith does. You know, I was watching Great American Christmas last night. I was watching the new Candace Cameron Bure movie on Great American Christmas, which is Great American Living. If you have Dish or if you have Spectrum, check them out. They are absolutely an amazing faith and family type of programming, instilling our faith and traditional values that are biblical. And so last night's episode from 8 to 10, it went on a little late, but it was an absolutely beautiful movie. If you have not had a chance, go check it out. I know that you can go to Philo, Philo, download the app, and you can also watch all the Great American Christmas movies there, as well as downloading Great American Community app. Also, if you have not had a chance, check out Matthew West's his podcast, his Christian music, and also the music he wrote for Great American Christmas and Great American Family. His newest song, Come Home, is so powerful. It really talks about the faith of the season and reminds us what the season really is about, and that is Christ and his second coming. So I would love for you to check it out. When I have the chance, I will, and I get the rights, I will play the song for you. But as we are headed into this Christmas and Hanukkah season, I want to really just focus on the reason for the season and share with you just the power of the season, Advent, as yesterday was the first Sunday of Advent. And then also as we talk about the Christmas traditions, Giving Tuesday tomorrow, hashtag Giving Tuesday, also talking about the power of our mental health through the holiday season, and then also talking about our kitchen table discussions. This morning, we are going to be bringing over to the show a new guest from Color Us United. His name is Kenny Xu. He is well known as a book author. He is the president of Color Us United. He has written an article on the Salvation Army. I don't know if you remembered from about a month or so ago, we had another gentleman on talking about the Salvation Army and how we need to restore the Salvation Army to what it was intended originally for. And so we're going to be talking about that. His most recent article was in Real Clear Market. And the title of the article, Kenny Xu is also the author of a new book, An Inconvenient Minority, The Attack on Asian American Excellence and the Fight for Meritocracy. He is the president of Color Us United, which advocates for a colorblind society. And in Real Clear Markets, if you are following us on Facebook, if you're following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Rumble, there is a link to this article. It's called The Salvation Army Doesn't Need DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It just needs to be the Salvation Army. So we're going to be speaking with him this morning at the top of the hour, just a few minutes here until he joins the show. And also, we're also going to be speaking with excuse me, I was checking my phone as we are doing this live podcast. Yes, I get messages 24/7 coming into this show. As we are also going into the second half of the show, we're going to be bringing back to the show young voices who I absolutely love just their relationship with a Common Sense America, and also with what they've been bringing to the table. They are amazing contributors, amazing commentators. So we'll be bringing back to the show Alexander William Salter, and he's going to be talking about, can Congress restore the integrity of the dollar? So I am so grateful to have each and every one of you here at Common Sense America. Thank you so much for your support. I also wanted to send out a quick note. Remember, tomorrow is hashtag Giving Tuesday. And as you saw in my mental health walk earlier during the Thanksgiving week, I mentioned the Bowery Mission, and we are collecting women's clothes, or we are collecting clothes for the men, women, and children's programs at the Bowery Mission. But what is very near and dear to my heart is the women's program. And we are collecting boxes of clothes that we are shipping out. My parents, thank you for shipping out 5 clothing boxes from Pennsylvania. Also to the Eileen Cook and her family, thank you so much for donating those clothes to go to the women's clothing at the Bowery Mission. Also to Julie Remain, who you guys have met here at Common Sense America. She was a part of the team of women in leadership and women in faith that we brought here to Common Sense America back in September when the show officially launched. Julie Remain works with the women's program at the Bowery Mission, and she also works with the clothing and organizes the clothing for the women. So, and my husband and I are shipping out another box and a half that will go out in the next couple of days to New York to the Bowery Mission. But if you have not had a chance and you do have clothes that you would like to give to me and our shipment, we will be putting them in the mail. Just private message me. If you have my number, text me, or you can private message me here on Facebook, LinkedIn, also on the YouTube channel. For all of those who have been tuning in and subscribing to our YouTube channel, we are so thankful. We are so grateful for you doing that. We have amazing guests who have been such gifts to Common Sense America. I am so thankful to all the women who surrounded me as I launched this podcast. It originally was a radio show, and the radio network had to go off the air. But I have, as I shared with family this weekend, I have continued to pursue this podcast. It means the world to me. And yes, we're on 5 days a week live from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern time. And there's a reason for that. I ran for state house, I worked for elected officials, and I saw something that was not being talked about, and that was the truth. Yes. And so I want to bring you the truth each and every morning. I want to raise the flag on things that are not being talked about and things that may be talked about but are so distorted in the content of the mainstream media. And if you are tuning into this show weekdays or you're watching it after, also know that this show airs on WHIGTV.com. It is a community TV programming out of Rocky Mount, North Carolina. They air my shows every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and they pick a flavor of the show that we did earlier in the week. And I'll tell you what, they are getting an amazing response of people calling in saying, hey, we love Common Sense America. Keep talking the truth. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep talking the truth. We're going to keep bringing talented commentators, writers, authors, those who are inspiring in their walks of faith, those who have maybe been struggling, those who are raising the flag on awareness, on our kids' education, on our mental health epidemic, on the jabs, on everything that has to do with the government being too much in our pockets and not really focusing on a budget versus a deficit. So we're going to be talking a lot. Also, the newly elected leaders who are going to be in Congress come January, and the new Congress that's ahead, the new senators. What is the state of North Carolina? Since we are here located by Camp Lejeune, Cherry Point, Seymour Johnson, Air Force Base, Fort Bragg. I'm going to be talking military people. I'm going to be talking veterans because those are hot topics. But I'm also going to be talking about our children, the next generation, and what is ahead for them. So, on that note, I am so honored to bring over to the show Kenny Xu. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I was just talking to our amazing audience here at Common Sense America about your article. I've already posted it. And thank you so much for what you were doing and raising the flag on what the Salvation Army is doing. Thank you for joining us here at Common Sense America. I did share with them your background and what you are doing with Color Us United. And I was watching your interview with Greg Kelly and from about a month ago, I believe, talking about Harvard and talking about your book and talking about everything that is happening in our society. But first and foremost, to our conservative audience who are looking for truth, talk to us about the updates on the Salvation Army and DEI. We had Christian Watson on back in October talking about what was transpiring. So I would love to hear what are the updates and what is really happening with the Salvation Army when we walk past those bell ringers. Do we donate?
I'd love to. So I'm president of Color Us United. We advocate for a race-blind society. And we
Mhm.
know that America is not a racist country. We know that ordinary Americans are not racist people. And the way we know that is because of organizations like the Salvation Army, right? I mean, these are Americans who give $10, $100, however much money to an organization that claims to, I mean, that they don't know which race of people their money is going to. They don't know which nation their money is going to. In fact, 80% of the Salvation Army's donations worldwide come from Americans.
Mhm.
Why would a racist country do that? Why would a racist country give to the Salvation Army? And
Mhm.
so when the Salvation Army last year came out with a statement saying that we need our members and our supporters to repent, lament, and apologize for racism, it's probably, it was very deeply hurtful to a
Mhm.
lot of people who supported the Salvation Army. In Color Us United, we launched a successful campaign to rescind that. But this year, we're going back to the table. The Salvation Army needs to make a statement. They need to say, we believe Americans are kind, generous, the most kind and generous, definitely not racist. And also, we will rescind our DEI initiatives that are trying to teach young people that their lives are made worse because of systemic racism. So
Mhm.
that's our goal with this campaign, and people can support our goal
Mhm.
by signing our petition at colorusunited.org.
Okay.
And if you interact with the bell ringer and everything like that,
Mhm.
tell them your thoughts. It's your decision whether you want to donate. We still believe the Salvation Army is doing great work, but at least tell them your thoughts on how you can get local chapters to stand up.
Mhm. One thing that's very personal to me and very concerning to me, before I had the show, before I ran for State House, I had lived in New York for quite a while and worked for the Bowery Mission, the oldest homeless rescue mission in the nation now, faith-based. And serving the homeless didn't matter what color they were. It didn't matter what they looked like. You served a human being who has blood running through their veins. And one thing that is really infuriating to me is hearing that, knowing that the Salvation Army, and I was looking at your article again this morning just to remind myself, they have added a racist division piece to this. And my question to you is, what is infuriating me is this. You had mentioned in your article, white people more privileged, but what about the white poor? Are they less deserving? And that really raised a red flag to me, because being in New York all those years and seeing the homeless, it was everybody, and even now, even more so. So let me ask you this. What about the white poor now? Are they less deserving because of the Salvation Army saying who is going to get better treatment? Is that really what they're about now?
Well, they had this equity training, a couple
Mhm.
equity, basically, the idea that all racial outcomes should be equal no matter what. It doesn't matter how
Mhm.
hard you study, we should force people to be equal, basically. That's what equity is. They had an equity training earlier last year where they asked the white members in the Pacific Territory specifically to stay silent while the members of other races express their grievances. And this is not the way we should be talking about need in society.
Mhm.
Your race does not make you a needy person. Okay,
Mhm.
let's be clear. There are poor white people who are needy. There are poor black people. There are poor Asian people who are
Yeah.
needy. We should not prioritize the
Yeah.
poor of any one race over the other. But that's exactly what the Salvation Army seems to be doing.
living here, so I will say this, living here in Eastern North Carolina can typically be a very poor state depending on where you look at it. It is just how it is here. And looking around and knowing that as we are bringing on to the show for Giving Tuesday tomorrow, some local organizations and national organizations, but I've had many people say, get the Salvation to come on your show, get the Salvation Army to come on your show. Well, I'm a believer. And I believe in faith. I believe in serving the least of these because that's what Christ calls us to do. But I said, my gut is telling me no, because they are all about saying that, America is bad and all their different things that they're doing through that diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's not what the Salvation originally stood for. And I want to read a couple pieces from your article because I really appreciate you doing this. You started off by saying the Salvation Army website declares, quote, "We meet human needs without discrimination. This simple yet profound mission rooted in the Christian gospel has propelled the Salvation Army to serve millions of Americans in need for over a century through a wide variety of programs that combat homelessness, hunger, addiction, and other forms of suffering." So what are we to do? I kind of want to see numbers because you guys are raising the flag on what is happening with the Salvation Army. Are the donors stepping back? Are volunteers stepping back? Are employees saying no more? What are your thoughts on that?
Volunteers have been stepping back at the Salvation Army because of this business for a while now. And, I have extensive contacts with a lot of members of the local Salvation Army chapters who are saying, the Salvation Army, they're losing their word on fire passion for Christ, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is this? This is not the giving army. This is the Salvation Army. They are a explicitly Christian organization whose purpose is to save people in the name of Christ. And if you turn it to secular ideologies like DEI, which says the United States is oppressive and believes and reifies secular race constructs instead of saying we are all one race and there is no Jew or Gentile or Greek or male or female or slave, or for you're all one under Christ Jesus,
right?
Then you are turning away from the Christian message.
Right.
So I would encourage you, Eden, to bring in that local Salvation Army captain.
Okay.
And give him a platform, but ask these hard questions. Do you believe that America is a racist country? Will your organization stand up to the national organization that is peddling DEI, saying these exact things?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, my husband and I go to the supermarket and they're already out there and we know the people that are ringing the bell. And it's like, I know in the back of my mind, do they even realize what's going on? Are they even aware of what's happening with the Salvation Army at the top levels? Like you said, bring in the local chapters. I will be challenged on that. I will do that. But ever since I had your colleague with Color Us United on back in October, I've been saying to people, don't talk to me about the Salvation Army, because they are no longer standing for what they originally believed in. So I want to be told that that's going to change. So let me ask you this: with your work as a leadership, as president of Color Us United, have you been able to get any responses out from the Salvation Army as you guys have been really pursuing this topic?
Decidedly negative ones. We launched last year at the turn of this campaign. We got such an outcry from Salvation Army donors. Over 18,000 donors signed our petition at colorusunited.org, which I still encourage you to go and do.
Okay.
It got such an outcry on social media and during the Red Kettle campaign that the national commissioner, Kenneth Hodder of the Salvation Army, was forced to release a video. And in this video, he entitled it, "Kenny Shoes War on Christmas and the Poor."
Oh, wow. He had a fun time with that headline.
No, his PR people must have loved to stick it to me, right? A guy who's just trying to point out issues within the Salvation Army and trying to help the Army succeed in its mission. Look, blaming people for racism doesn't help a single person.
Nope, it does not.
DEI doesn't help a single person in poverty. If you are sticking to that mission over your mission of salvation and service, then no, people don't deserve to give to you. So we are looking for a response from the Salvation Army that signifies that they understand the depth of this issue within their ranks. And we will continue this campaign until they do.
I would be very interested to see the dollars the dollar difference compared from this year to next year and even before to see how the dollars potentially have dropped because they are continuing to push this racism card on an organization that was founded on Christ, and Christ was not racist by any means. And it is not even close to being biblical anymore. How were you tipped off to this originally starting? How were you tipped off to knowing that this was actually happening? And my question for that reason is the follow-up. How do we look at other organizations who are faith-based, who are historical, like Salvation Army, to see, are they doing this too? Are they sliding it in there? And is it really taking away from that? What are some triggers that we should be looking for?
Well, I'll tell you about some of the numbers. In Massachusetts, Salvation Army donations went down 20%. There's Illinois chapters donations down hundred thousands of dollars. We don't know the annual report, which is 2022 annual report that they're going to release early next year, but I hope to come back and talk about it.
Yeah.
So we know we've had an impact. Now, in terms of how do Christian donors and other people who don't want to give to DEI, how do they navigate this issue? I would go and ask your charity that you regularly donate to. I would ask your local branch of your charity, do you have DEI statements? Do you believe that America is a racist country? And if they do, and they will say these things or, say these things, I would say, why? How does this link into your mission of service at all? And if they can't give you a satisfactory answer, then I fear that your donation to that organization may be going into helping the racism narrative instead of helping actually poor people of all races.
Right.
So I would be intelligent in that, and the Salvation Army is the lead example.
Well, let me ask you this. So going back to the original, what were signs? What were the research? What got you guys to this point as to what they were doing? Was it the number differences that you saw, or was it what was tipped off to say, oh, this is bigger than what we realized?
We had a tip. We had a tip from the Washington Times article last year about the Salvation Army potentially going woke. Now I look, every time somebody says an organization's going woke, I'm always looking into it, right? That's my job.
Sure.
I started contacting the local Salvation Army chapters, going on media, talking about this. And then I started getting a lot of feedback from local Salvation Army saying, yes, this is going on. This is right. It's true. And after I got a critical mass of that, I realized this is not just a local Salvation Army problem or a problem of the national office. This is a problem that is spread throughout the entire Corps. And this is something that I became convicted to attack with my organization, Colorist United, because we advocate for a race-blind society. We don't want race to be in the equation at all in these decisions, and yet it's increasingly becoming in our culture, and the Salvation Army is a staple of that. They have an opportunity right now to make a message that affirms the generosity of Americans. Imagine what a positive statement that would be if they could help to unify America with such a statement instead of divisive DEI.
Exactly. One thing I wanted to ask you, we're going to switch over to just in our final piece of this segment. I was watching your interview with Greg Kelly. I knew him when I lived in New York. His mom and dad were huge advocates and friends to the Bowery Mission where I worked. And so I was watching your interview with Greg, and talk to me a little bit, if you could just give the audience a little insight into Harvard. I was accepted into the Harvard Extension program and absolutely love their leadership classes that they provide online and at the Kennedy School of Government and things of that nature. And do I agree with everything they do? No. But they need people like you and me to stand up and, fight what they are doing at Harvard. So talk to me a little bit about the Harvard work that you've been doing and just the analysis and what the flag you were raising, the truth that you're exposing.
Yes. So Harvard, everybody knows Harvard. It's supposed to be a beacon of excellence for our country, right? This is why you chose to go to Harvard for their extension program. This is why a lot of people want to come into Harvard. So when Harvard tells people, we're going to admit people based on, in part, their race, which is what they're doing, and they explicitly admit that. Then what signals does that send to our high-achieving young people in this country? The signals that it sends is your race is more important than your work. You can get a leg up if you identify a certain way. If you say that you are transgender, you can get preferential treatment. It is the definition of increasing racial narcissism in our society, and narcissism based on sexual identity as well.
Yeah.
And so this is why I decided I have to stand up for this. I wrote a book called An Inconvenient Minority last year that talked about the real victims of this discrimination. Those are hardworking white and Asian Americans that all they want to do is get in based on merit, and they work super hard. And Asian Americans actually are required to score over 270 points higher on the SAT to have the same chance of admission as a Black person to Harvard. And so this is real discrimination. It's still happening in our country today, in a country that we think is supposed to get over that. No, it's still happening. It's just not coming from, the white nationalists, of whom all of those people have been scattered and basically destroyed in our society. But it's still being reified in progressive culture today, and that starts with Harvard.
Yeah. Have you seen what other schools, Ivy League schools, have you seen go in this direction as well? Is Yale and UNC Chapel Hill on that list? I mean, those are the short lists. I'm guessing, but I don't want to say something that's not factual.
Yeah. If you read my book, An Inconvenient Minority, I go into detail about the ideology. It is a systemic ideology, and it is at all of the Ivy League universities. Some it's worse than others, but Harvard and Yale, it is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And the ideology basically says we need diversity on campus, and Asians are suddenly labeled as the not diverse population because too many Asians get in based on their own merit. And if Harvard didn't discriminate against Asians, Asians would make up 43% of the university. And so that, they would say, well, we need people of other races specifically. And they would go out of their way to look at the races of applications. Yale does this as well. Basically, at the admissions committee, they'll review it. They'll give you a plus if you are Black or Hispanic, and they'll give you a minus if you're white or Asian. Moves up to another committee, plus, minus, same thing. Moves up through 4 committees, your application. That's a 4 times plus or minus factor just based on your race.
Okay. I'm like, I had no idea that it was that in depth with regards to the 4 steps. So let's end on this final note as we are headed into the stocking stuffer Christmas season. Does your book fit into a stocking stuffer? I want to promote your book. I'm going to do the same thing with my next guest. I am all about book promotion. So where can we get your book? Does it fit, or should we and what's the best audience for your book? I want to make sure your book gets some publicity here.
I would say my book looks pretty nice in a stocking stuffer.
Okay. All right.
You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, wherever books are sold. Okay. This is a book that sold out. It's a first press release in a month. So, but we've been able to get a second, third edition coming out.
Okay.
Give it to your friend who cares about the future of the country.
Perfect. Well said. Well, Kenny Xu, I'm looking forward to having you back come January. Let's follow up on what's happening with the Salvation Army. I am very concerned about it at a personal level, but also professional level. And I will take your challenge. I will reach out to the local chapter and get them over here. And Lord willing, they'll come and join. And but on that note, please keep us informed. And please keep us up to date. And for all of those who are tuning in, I want to thank Kenny Xu, president of Color Us United, advocating for a colorblind society. Thank you for joining Common Sense America. Have a great holiday season, Kenny.
Thank you.
Many blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. And as we are rolling right through this amazing Monday morning, I can't believe it's Monday. Thanksgiving really throws off the calendar, but I'm so grateful for the time off this past week and the time to be with family, the time for mental health walks, and the time to really just sit down. And one thing I will say is we bring over Alexander William Salter, a contributor for Young Voices. He is an economics professor in the Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech University. And he has co-authored an opinion article in The Hill titled Congress can restore the integrity of the dollar. I'm sitting here thinking, one of my radio friends said, does freedom of speech probably does stop at the Thanksgiving table? So we're going to bring Alexander over and we're going to talk about that. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, we did. Freedom of speech continued only to a certain point, though.
As is probably prudent when food and company is on the line.
Exactly. We had a wonderful Thanksgiving. My husband and I traveled for it's only about 7.5 hours, Pennsylvania, ended up being another hour and a half. We made it. We're still sane. We had an amazing time with my brother, my sister-in-law, my parents, and my father, who's never worked for the union in his life. He is a consultant on many levels. We were decorating the house for Christmas, and I was not done yet. And I looked, and he was sitting in the chair. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm on my union break." I said, "What the heck?" I said, "Okay, all right, okay, I'll give you 10 more minutes." But I just sat there and kind of chuckled. My dad is very conservative, very faith-based, biblical, and he loves young voices, and he loves when you guys come to the show. So I know he's extremely excited about this morning. I was reading your article. Can Congress restore the integrity of the dollar? Or should I say, can the Republicans restore it? Or should I say, now that Nancy is scooting away, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I read your article and I noticed that you co-authored with former Congressman David Brat, and I love the article. But what has been your response, especially it being in the Hill?
There's been a pretty positive response, I'd say. I think that given how much of an issue inflation is, just how much it's hurting Americans' pocketbooks, there really is more of an appetite now than in decades, I would say, to reforming our monetary system. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be an insanely difficult fight. But in terms of making sure we can actually stabilize the dollar's purchasing power and sort of slay the inflationary beast, I think it's a fight that's worth having.
One of my favorite quotes in your article, you call the Fed the behemoth organization. Okay, that's just fabulous. It is a monster. But there are a couple things I took from your article, and I really want to talk about this. Okay, $6 trillion during the COVID-19 years. $6 trillion, not billion, $6 trillion. And then we are talking about the new Congress. Obviously, we're kind of in a lame duck session right now. So you mentioned 3 current bills. Talk to me about the breakdown of those 3 bills put out by Republicans. And I want to also go to the next piece after that. Alex Mooney, Republican, West Virginia, talked about binding the federal hand. So talk to me about the 3 bills and then Mooney's bill specifically.
Happy to. As you noted, all 3 were introduced by Republicans, although I think that there's a chance that moderate Democrats could get on board as well.
Okay.
People understand which way the winds are blowing, and Americans hate inflation. Well, if they want to stop seeing their wages eroding, we need to reform the monetary system. And so I think that there is a chance for a moderate bipartisan coalition here. Again, it's a long shot, but it's the best shot that we've had in a while. Okay. So these 3 bills that we focus on in the opinion piece are various proposed reforms to America's central bank. One of them focuses on stabilizing the purchasing power of the dollar directly, basically removing from the Fed's mandate the so-called full employment plank. Right now, the Fed has a dual mandate from Congress to pursue full employment and stable prices. Well, if you know anything about economics, you know that the only way the Fed can do anything for unemployment is by stabilizing prices, by keeping what economists call aggregate demand stable, by propping up the purchasing power of the dollar. So really, the employment plank is redundant. There's no reason for it to be there. It's not doing any work, and all it's doing is giving central bankers cover for pursuing mischief that's outside of their mandate. So by focusing the Fed 100% on a stable dollar, we can improve monetary policy and help Americans get some relief that way. The other 2 bills are in the service of what I call the nuclear option. Rather than just reforming the Fed's mandate, we're actually talking about going for gold, talking about restoring the commodity standard and putting the dollar back on a gold standard. The gold standard is much maligned in economic circles, but for really no good reason. If you look at overall economic growth, if you look at business cycles, if you look at financial crises, all of these things that we experience today are no better than they were before. And in
Mhm.
fact, some of the measures look much worse,
Mhm.
right? In terms of how the Fed has actually performed in terms of its discretionary power to maintain monetary policy, it has not contributed to US economic stability. All
Mhm.
we really get is inflation with no increased compensation and economic stability to make up
Right.
for it. So
Right.
given that, why not do what we know has worked before? Gold-backed money is history's most successful monetary rule, and we should give it another look.
So let me ask you this. Something that he also highlighted, and maybe no, you highlighted this. American money is controlled, and it should be controlled by the market, but it's being controlled by the government. Is that a fair assessment of what you said in the article? Help me come to that understanding in regards to. So I'm sitting here and being a poli-sci broadcast journalism major. So economics was my dad's space and I loved learning from him. But talk to me about the fact, is it better if looking at what Biden is doing from the standpoint of the feds and the government, what what do we need to be, in layman's terms, what do we need to be aware of? How much more is the government going to be in our back pocket? And do we need to, let me ask you this, do we need to be continuing to take money out of our bank accounts and our savings? Do we need to be putting them in some other aspect? Talk to me about the market versus federal government being in our pockets.
Great question. The line that you quoted is itself a quote. It's legislative language from one of the bills. And the
Mm-hmm.
way it works is like this. Right now, the money supply is determined by the Central Bank of the United States. And by that, I mean the most narrow measure of the money supply, what economists call the monetary base.
Mm-hmm.
The question is that really the best system that we have for determining the basic money supply? I
Mm-hmm.
don't think so. I
Okay.
think that if we actually put the basic money supply on the gold standard, markets would actually work better. It's
Mm-hmm.
about reducing the ability for bureaucrats who really have no effective check or control on their behavior to act discretionarily and basically change the money supply willy-nilly to pursue technocratic goals. That's
Mm-hmm.
not working for the American people.
Right.
We're seeing what's happening because of that.
Right.
Record price increases, right? We're seeing 40-year high inflation. So it's clear that what's going on right now is not the way that you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
If you can stabilize at its basic level the dollar by tying it to gold, you create a strong foundation for economic prosperity. It's like this. As long as everybody knows the length of a meter, we can
Mm-hmm.
all run the road race, right? We can
Right.
all go run the race before we
Yep.
have our Thanksgiving turkey, right? Do our
Yep.
turkey trot. But if the definition of a meter is constantly changing, we don't know how to pace ourselves. We're
Right.
not going to be able to run a good race. We're going to be bumping into each other. We're going to run too fast, too slow. It's about getting the basic rules of the game right. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we can get that weight or measure that is the purchasing power of the dollar on a strong foundation, that's going to give markets the certainty they need to deliver stability in the short run and economic growth in the long run. It's a
Mm-hmm.
winning proposition for Americans all around.
Yeah, you had mentioned in the article, I noticed the blurred lines on the fiscal responsibility. And, you know, with a new Congress and Republicans taking over the House, at least, and we will know maybe more on the Senate with the Herschel Walker, Georgia aspect soon. But with the Republicans being back control of the House, do you think some of those blurred lines would actually change for the better? Or do you think Obama, Biden, as I call it, the administration is going to come in and just pull executive order after executive order? What are your thoughts on that from the fiscal responsibility that Republicans are known for, the conservative fiscal responsibility? What are your thoughts on that for the new Congress?
Right. Well, unfortunately, lame duck Congresses, even before
Yep.
an upcoming divided Congress, are not exactly known for
Nope.
fiscal prudence.
No, they're
There
not.
is this, I do anticipate that we're going to get an emergency bill to avert a shutdown that's going to be just throwing more money at a broken problem.
Yeah.
More broadly, though, it's true that Republicans have a record of fiscal prudence and financial stability, but in recent years, they've kind of squandered that.
Hmm.
Before President Biden, the largest runner of deficits was President Trump, even before the COVID years.
Yeah.
So I think that if Republicans want to recover their credibility on fiscal matters to the public, they really have to take advantage of divided government and teach the American people, make the case to the public why fiscal prudence is actually in their interest.
Hmm.
Everybody understands why they want the government to keep on spending. There's always an interest group that wants more money. It's much harder to understand why we actually need to get control of this process.
Hmm.
And if we don't, the only thing that's going to happen is that the central bank, the Federal Reserve, is going to continue to indirectly monetize these deficits. So
Hmm.
unless you control the fiscal problem, you're inviting more of the inflation problem through the back door. I think that Republicans can and should restore their own credibility in terms of running a sound fiscal house, because that's going to do the most good for the American people in terms of eliminating the conditions that cause central banks to run the printing presses and drive up prices.
Well, I mean, you said quite a few things in just that one statement. And, I sit there and say, and I've said this before in our conversations because I go back to it. I have my girlfriend Money Talk with Melanie on all the time. She talks about the dollars and cents of the kitchen table, and she's very good at breaking that down for the working mom and the retiree and the elderly and what's ahead for our military and our veterans fiscally. And, I sit there and say the blurred lines, and we need to teach. I put the pressure back on the Republicans. I put the pressure back on those newly elected. Like you said, lame duck, you never get anything done. We know that. Well, most of us know that. But for those who are really just focused on 9 to 5, 9 to 6, getting kids back and forth, making sure there's food in the refrigerator and gas in the tank, I sit there and say, we voted for these people at the polls. We want the best for the nation, but at the end of the day, I always say to people, follow the money, because it's clearly not in our pockets. So where is the money? And, I have trouble trusting even the Republicans that are up there, because they have not proven anything to me other than maybe Mooney saying, let's get some work done and let's bind these guys. But I don't see that from too many people up there. I see more of them now. And I this is what I love about my show. I can rant until YouTube takes me down. But, I was up there for a long time. And I loved how we kept the doors open for people to come in and meet with their elected officials. And now it has this elite feeling to, well, we are better than you. You are the lower, you are the people in modern day Russia. And you no longer have that importance. We're up here and you're down here. And it really shows when it comes to them and the finances and them working off of a deficit and not a budget. We have to budget in our own homes, but why are we not holding them accountable? Why are people not saying more? Okay, that's my rant.
That's a good one.
Thank you. It's just infuriating to see what is happening. Being in Pennsylvania, all the way down here to North Carolina, and I keep saying to people who saw me run for the state of North Carolina, I'm kind of looking at Florida right now. They have a really good example of how things are going so well for them, because you are living with, there is accountability. Talk to me about Texas. Is it the same thing for you guys there, knowing that you are in Texas and you just got back from Florida?
A lot of stuff going on there. I'll start by saying that one of my favorite expressions is trusting politicians of any party is un-American.
Exactly.
This country is founded on not trusting politicians.
Exactly.
So I think we have to keep that healthy distrust alive.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. This is a kitchen table issue, because what we're seeing with this inflation is very similar to what we've seen with past inflations.
Mm-hmm.
What goes up first? The prices of the goods and services that we consume. Food, energy. Obviously, those are the most volatile. But now we know that this inflation is broad-based. The price of everything is going up. Americans are being asked to be happy about the fact that the rate of increase of prices is going down, as if the fact that some things are going up 6% per year rather than 8% per year is something to write home about. No, we should be furious.
Right.
Because what happens is those prices rise first before wages do, which means your purchasing power is steadily eroding.
Yes.
You're working hard. You've got a household to run. You've got a life to live. You've got a family to provide for. The government, at minimum, should not be laying additional burdens on your back by causing prices to rise faster than wages. But that's exactly what's happening with this inflationary episode. Now, you can push back against that with good public policy at the state and local level, try and give people some relief that way. Mm-hmm. And that's when I think the models that we're currently seeing in Texas and Florida that are very successful, if we're judging by the internal migration patterns, right? Everybody wants to come to Texas. Everybody wants to come to Florida.
Right.
There's a reason for that. Because these state governments are, for the most part, getting the government off their backs and trying to give them some relief. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not always a good idea. I'm sorry, that is always a good idea, regardless of whether inflation is high or low.
Right.
Prices are going up 8%. Even if inflation was 0, right, you would still want to minimize costly regulations. But there's an argument to be made that that's more salient to the public when they're currently hurting from something else like inflation.
Right.
Good supply side policy is always a good idea. even when inflation, which is a demand side issue, is going bad. That being said, I think that people really appreciate relief that might come now from governors, from state legislatures. And so that's why you're going to see more, I think, people looking to leave behind failed state and local government models in blue states that aren't working and head to places like Texas and Florida.
Yeah, I sit there and think about that because my parents are retirees, and I sit there and think about elderly as well. It's really going to affect the elderly population more and more. And I'm curious to see what the numbers are going to look like for Texas and Florida, and even South Carolina and Georgia, as they continue to move down to these warmer climates, not just for the warmer climates, but because of the money and the fiscal policy issues in the blue states. I completely agree with you on that. Okay, so you heard me ask Kenny Xu earlier on the stocking stuffer. Does your book fit into a stocking for Christmas? And talk to us about your book.
My book absolutely fits into a stocking, and I know that because I've tested it. We have empirical evidence, as economists like to say. We've got the controlled experiment. Yes, it does fit into a stocking. It's called Money and the Rule of Law, Generality and Predictability in Monetary Institutions, which is just a fancy economist way of saying, hey, we take this idea of the rule of law seriously in all of our public institutions. The foundation of the American experiment is the rule of law. The idea that not just the citizens, but the government also has to follow the rules. We need to apply that to monetary policy because right now the Federal Reserve is, in a very real sense, lawless. We have been dealing with lawless monetary policy for at least 20 years, and a strong argument can be made that it's been going on much longer than that. And if we want to get Americans the relief that they deserve in terms of fighting off inflation and preventing financial panics, we need to get this process under control now while there's still time. That's the basic argument in the book. And we also discuss some ways to actually buy it in the Fed's hands, basically give them a rule that forces them to act in the public interest, to basically serve those kitchen table issues that we were talking about a minute ago. So I'd be happy if all your listeners would go out and give that a purchase for their Christmas gifts. That would be wonderful.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Amazon's a great place. You can buy it directly from the publisher at Cambridge, but Amazon is very easily, right? Just 1 or 2 clicks.
Right.
I'm not sure it's available at actual booksellers like Barnes & Noble, but Amazon will get it to you very quickly.
Okay, perfect. And I have noticed that Amazon is getting things very quickly, especially with all the layoffs. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the layoffs from Amazon, but I've noticed that they are still working around the clock to get us things right on time for Christmas. So, do you have
I
any
hadn't heard about the layoffs? Was there another round?
I had heard it was right before we did Thanksgiving. I had heard about layoffs, so I wasn't sure if you had heard any other updates, and if that is, if that is a telltale sign of what's to come for our economics, or is it just, why would they do that at Christmas time is my question.
Yeah, that's a curious time to be laying people off. Presumably those workers are really going to help your production and distribution system. So if you're letting them go just before the holidays, I have to wonder whether the initial data trickles that are coming in suggest that the usual holiday spending bump that we expect might not materialize. That might portend some ominous issues for the first quarter, second quarter next year. We'll have to wait and see. I hope not.
Right.
I don't want things to go badly just because it's bad for the Democrats. These are real issues that affect real people. So I hope that the economy is strong. But if it's not, we're going to have a serious conversation about what kinds of policies and what party is ultimately best for managing the economic affairs of this nation.
Well, what we'll do is if you can come back for the first and second quarter to break it down, that would be wonderful. I would love to have you come back and talk about that. On that note, Alexander Williams Salter, contributor for Young Voices, one of my favorites. Love Young Voices. Thank you so much. I look forward to having you back. If you do you have any new articles coming out that we should be aware of? Wall Street Journal, anything like that?
I've got a few articles coming out, but mostly in my local newspaper here in Lubbock. I'm finishing up a series of op-eds that I've had a really good time writing, but I will be sure to let you know if anything nationally printed comes out.
Yes. Thank you so much. Many blessings to you and your family. Have a wonderful Christmas season, and we will see you soon. Thank you, sir.
You, Eden. God bless you and yours.
You too. Bye-bye. For all those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. Man, what a great show back. I tell you what, it's Monday, November the 28th. It is the final Monday in November. And we are headed into the Christmas season. And also for all of our friends out there for the Hanukkah season as well. So excited to share the season with you. And I am so excited that Common Sense America is on the air. And I am so thankful that Common Sense America gets to come to your homes, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, Rumble, my media website, and all the social channels. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. On that note, it is about 10 till 10 on Monday morning. We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Thank you for joining the show. And for all of those tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Monday, November the 28th, 2022. We are headed into a phenomenal week, and I was just sitting here receiving text messages, and I am so excited. We have some amazing new guests to come to the show this week, focused on Giving Tuesday, focusing on mental health awareness for the holidays, focusing on our military and our veterans, focusing on what is happening in the Ukraine. We have such amazing guests. I cannot wait to introduce you to each and every one of them. If you have missed an episode, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Common Sense America with Eden Hill. Also, you can see on the screen, EdenGordonMedia.com. You can also find episodes there. If you have comments, guest suggestions, ideas, stories you want to share with our Common Sense audience, please send me a note on Facebook. Send me a note, private message me, text me, anything you want. Thank you. We would love to bring your ideas, suggestions, guest ideas, and stories to the show here at Common Sense America. I was just reading some of the notes that I just received. It looks like we may have Special Operations Association of America join the show on Friday for our military and veterans segment, which I'm thrilled to mention to you. They are fighting for those who fight for us by advocating for the special operations community and their families. And I just received a notification that we are looking to have them on Friday. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. And also, I received a note last night from our neighbors and who are dear friends of ours that we may be bringing over some special people who are serving and who are advocating for the people of the Ukraine. And we look forward to sharing their stories and what they are doing on the forefront over there. Also, mental health is important. And I shared with you in my Thanksgiving video last week, walking, getting out, doing a mental health walk daily is so important and is so key. So if you have not had a chance to go out and take a 10-minute walk, even a 5-minute walk, and just focus on your surroundings, focus on the sky, focus on the trees, focus on the smells, the tastes, what you hear, just focus on praying and thinking about what you are grateful for. We have so much to be grateful for in this time. Also think about the homeless that I mentioned to you, because tomorrow is Giving Tuesday and you still have the next 12 hours to get me your clothes if you would like to ship clothes to the Bowery Mission Women's Program in New York City. My dear friend Julie Remain is receiving those clothes. My parents and the Cook family, thank you so much for sending out those 5 boxes going to Julie from Pennsylvania and the Bowery Mission. We will be sending out a couple more boxes today that will be headed to the Bowery Mission in New York. 227 Bowery, New York, New York. If you want to go ahead and ship clothes, it's going to be a very cold winter in New York this season, this Christmas season and this winter. So if you have extra coats, extra sweaters, extra pants, jeans, you name it, extra gloves, send them to the Bowery Mission. And also, if you want to share with your social community, whether it's Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever social network you are on, hashtag Giving Tuesday and hashtag Bowery Mission. I know that they will be grateful. I know that they had a phenomenal Thanksgiving, serving more than 50,000 homeless in New York City. So thank you if you donated. Thank you if you prayed for them. Thank you for your service to the Bowery Mission. Thank you all at the Bowery Mission for what you are doing to provide for the New York City homeless. On that note, tomorrow, I don't know if you had heard some of the news headlines over the weekend. We did listen to Fox News as we were driving the podcasts and the radio show and the live shows. And tomorrow we're going to be having on what is happening with the China lockdowns and COVID and what has been happening over there. And, you know, I told you we're about bringing truth to the show. So I want to make you aware we will be talking about that tomorrow. It is very concerning, and it is you're going to be learning a lot from someone who has been on the show once before. I'm not sure if you will remember him. He is a phenomenal human. He is very intelligent, and he will be breaking down what is happening with the COVID lockdowns in China. And we will be talking about that. It's been all over the news. And so we're going to be breaking it down here firsthand of what is happening. So that will be on tap for tomorrow, along with a Giving Tuesday interview. And you will hear about that more on our social media as we head out throughout the day. I will be sending around on social media all of our new guests for the rest of the week. So until then, it is just about 10 a.m. Eastern time here on Monday, November the 28th. Have a blessed day. Go download Matthew West's new song, Come Home for Christmas, and go check out Candace Cameron's new movie, A Christmas Present. We hope that you have been blessed by today's show. Be strong, be courageous, and get ready. We have a great week ahead. Merry Christmas to you all. We'll see you tomorrow.